Hello class, welcome back to YouTube, welcome back to cyberspace, welcome back to our lesson on fractions. Today we're going to be learning about adding and subtracting fractions. Adding and subtracting fractions is something that you've done before. You've probably done it using brownie pans or pizza slices. Let me explain. If you have two fractions, 3/6 and 2/6, you can add them together and you can visualize it using a brownie pan. Here we have a brownie pan with 6 slices. These fractions say take 3 slices out of the 6, that's our first fraction, color them in. The next fraction says add 2 more slices out of the 6 and color them in. How many did we color in total? We colored in 5 out of the 6 slices. So 3/6 plus 2/6 equals 5/6. When adding two fractions, there are 2 steps to the process. The first step is going to be to make the bottoms, or the denominators, the same. The second step is going to be to add or subtract the tops. In our first step, we have 2 ways of making the denominators the same. We can either divide one to make it the same as the other, or to put it in smaller terms, or we can multiply to make both of the fractions bigger, but make the bottoms equal. Let's try the first method of dividing on these 2 fractions. If we have 2/6, and we want to put it into lower terms, we need our magical change factor arrow. Change factor arrow is going to help us divide both the top and the bottom to make that fraction smaller, but still the same fraction. So how are we going to make 2/6 smaller? I'm going to put a 1 on top because I know that's the smallest terms that I can go. And if 2 turns into 1, that means our change factor is going to be 2. Why? Because 2 divided by 2 equals 1. If we have a change factor dividing by 2, that means 6 divided by 2 will give us 3. So this fraction is 1/3. Now let's find our other fraction, 6/9. I'm going to use the change factor for this to make it into a similar fraction to this one up here. I want the bottom of this new fraction to be a 3 because I need a 3 in order to add it to this one. So what change factor will take us from a 9 to a 3? Change factor of dividing by 3 will do that because 9 divided by 3 equals 3. What is 6 divided by 3? That is 2. Now we have 2 new fractions, 1/3 and 2/3, which gives us a whole new addition problem. 1/3 plus 2/3. We can add these 2 numbers. We can add these 2 fractions because the bottoms are the same. And that will equal 3/3. The second way of making 2 fractions the same is through multiplication. If we have 2/3 and 3/5, we can make those the same portions, or the same denominators, by multiplying. So our question is, what can we multiply 2/3 by, and what can we multiply 3/5 by to make sure that they have the same bottom number? For this, we're going to use a change factor again. However, in this case, the change factor isn't dividing, it is multiplying. Now, what you have to ask yourself in this scenario is, if you want a 5 and a 3 to be the same number, what is one number that they'll both equal? An easy way to do that is to say, well, what is 5 times 3? 5 times 3 is going to be 15. So in this case, the change factor of turning 3 into 15 is going to be a 5. And in this case, the change factor of turning a 5 into a 15 is going to be 3. Whatever you do to the bottom, you also have to do to the top. So 2 times 5 is 10, and 3 times 3 is 9. And now we have two fractions with the same denominator, 10/15 and 9/15, which gives us our new problem. (10/15) plus 9/15. And that will equal 19/15. Here's another scenario where you're adding two fractions, and it doesn't matter if you divide or multiply. And this is why. Because if you have two 8s, you can easily change the 8 to a 4, which gives them the same bottom. Or, if you have 1/4, you can easily change the 4 into an 8 by multiplying, which gives them the same bottom. And so in this case, you either choose the two 8s, or you choose the 1/4, and you turn either fraction into an 8th or a 4th. I also want to make a note on negatives in fractions. If you have a fraction, like 1/4, but there's a negative in it, what you want to do with that negative is you want to assume that the 1 is the negative. Therefore, when you add or subtract a fraction, suppose we're adding 2/4, then you can think about it as -1 plus 2. And that answer is going to be a positive 1/4. To review, the way to add or subtract fractions is you have two fractions, you make both of the fractions have the same denominator or the same bottom by either multiplying or dividing one or both of them. Then you add or subtract the tops of the fractions.